This week on the Pressurecast, Ni no Kuni 2 gets delayed, the new 3DS ends production, Oculus slices its prices, and Kingdom Hearts is heading to Toy Story. It's Monday, July 17, 2017. Everything happening in the world of video games is here, now, on the Pressurecast. Hey, Pressure Pals, welcome to the 190th episode of the Pressurecast. Video Games Are Dumb.com's weekly news panic that posts every single Monday on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn Radio, Google Play Music, and a bunch of other services. Just go check it out in the description below. And while you're there, you can find all the links to contact the Pressurecast, email, phone number, text message. I guess phone number and text message are the same thing, but you know what I mean. You can tweet, you can go to Facebook and leave a comment, or you can leave a comment below here on the old YouTube page, and I'll get to your question on the next episode. How exciting is that? I'm empowering a nation. Anyway, we have a lot to get to this week, so we need to hurry up and just get on the train. Chugga chug chug chug. Here comes the train. Tooty toot toot. Boop, boop. That's right, it's time for the Hype Train. Feel the PR vibrations as we barrel towards Video Game Satisfaction Station on the Hype Train. This is the part of the show we talk about all those upcoming video games and events to get you hyped up to spend your money and become a video game guru. And we'll get to our cover story about Nintendo and VR in just a moment, but we need to take a second and talk about Kingdom Hearts 3. Why do we need to talk about Kingdom Hearts 3? All they did is give us a little bit of information. No. Any information we get about Kingdom Hearts 3, we absolutely need to talk about. I'm not even a big Kingdom Hearts, fan or a big Disney fan, and even I know that any shred of detail is huge. And we finally got a release date. That is right. Kingdom Hearts 3 is going to be out in 2018. That's what Square Enix is saying. That's basically the entire bit of information we have right there. When in 2018? Who knows? Could be January, could be December. Keep those expectations low. That's all I'm saying. But we did get a brand new trailer. We got to see some brand new combat abilities and a brand new world taking place in the Toy Story universe. That is right. You had Sora and Goofy and Donald hanging out with Woody and Buzz, which was pretty cool. They were hanging out in Andy's room. They were fighting the Heartless on Andy's driveway. They ran into a toy store, and at one point Sora jumped inside of a mech robot toy and was flying around in first person fighting the Heartless. It was completely bonkers, and you absolutely need to go and watch this trailer. Even if you're not a big fan, like me, you have to watch it just because of the amount of graphical effects and just kind of cool details. Like, for instance, Sora, Donald, and Goofy, they're in this Toy Story universe, and they've been adapted into toys, but they don't really look like toys at first. You have to look closely, and you start noticing the way that their individual fingers can be adjusted, kind of like those really expensive Japanese toys. It was super cool. Highly recommend it. You have to go and watch it. It's just, like I said, I'm not a Kingdom Hearts fan, not really a Disney fan. This blew me away. And on top of that, you get to see Woody and Buzz speaking Japanese, which is just really something special. But if you are a Kingdom Hearts fan, unlike me, keep those expectations low. I don't mean about the game, I just mean about the release date. Like, don't go into this thinking, oh right, I'm going to be playing Kingdom Hearts 3 July 1st of 2018. Probably not going to happen. Think more like December of 2018. Keep expectations low. Low. Maybe it'll get delayed too. Just relax. It's really cool that we got any bit of information, okay? Great. Now let's get on to the main story. Toot toot. So, living over here in the United States, it's becoming increasingly difficult to find an arcade. In fact, if you're under the age of 20, you've likely never experienced the joy of a local arcade where you pop in a few quarters, play some games, and hang out with some friends. Always a good time, right? Well, not really anymore here in America. But over in Japan, it's a totally different story. For nearly 40 years, dedicated video game spaces have existed and thrived thanks to the unique hardware experiences and the social setting. Let's say you're getting out of school. You want to go hang out with your friends at the arcade. Let's say you're a business guy that's trying to relax on your lunch break. Stop by the arcade, play some games. It's much more uniform than it ever was here in the United States, with maybe the exception of the late 70s. But anyway, later this year, publisher and developer Bandai Namco launched a brand new effort to create miniature amusement parks referred to as VR Zone Project ICANN. I don't know why they call it ICANN, but they do. Maybe it's because you can do anything in VR. I don't get it. Well, that operated between April to October of 2016, and then it closed because it was like a temporary space, right? Well, last weekend they opened up a brand new Project VR in the Shinjuku district of Tokyo, except this time they brought along a major partner. And if you've read the title of this episode, you already know who they are. But it's still a pretty big deal. That is right, Mario Kart Arcade GP VR. That's the entire name right there. It launched alongside the brand new VR Zone on July 14th, and it features all of the signature Mario Kart touchstones, except in a first-person VR experience. Now, how do you play this exactly? Well, players are put inside of a driving seat, like you would see in most arcades, complete with pedals and steering wheels, but the major difference is they have HTC Vive headsets strapped onto their face. Oops, smacked the microphone, my bad. Now, if that wasn't cool enough, they actually have special wristbands that attach to their wrists, obviously. They kind of look like miniature, I don't even know what you'd call them, like candelabras? You know, things where all the candles go on there? I don't know, they look really, really weird. They look kind of bulky, but apparently they are. Well, these things attach to players' wrists to allow them to throw banana peels and green shells just like you do in Mario Kart. You have to go and watch this if you have not seen it. It is bonkers. It looks like, I mean, it's one-to-one hand movement, from what I can tell. It's not a pre-rendered animation when you're throwing a shell, which is amazing. And yes, there's going to be multiple chairs lined up for multiplayer, though I couldn't find any specific numbers as to how many players can play it at once. Now, of course, there are other VR experiences at the Project ICANN zone. Just a weird name, but they mostly revolve around projects that were based around Bandai Namco properties. You've got your Dragon Ball Z, Neon Genesis Evangelion, a couple of Gundam games, I believe. And before you ask, do not expect this to come to the West. This is not coming to the West. It's not going to happen. This is staying totally within Japan. So don't be expecting them to open up one in Ohio. That's not gonna happen, buddy. Now, before we go any further, it's important to point out that Nintendo did not actually make this VR version of Mario Kart. I believe it was Bandai Namco that at least funded the project. If not, they developed it in-house entirely, which makes sense because it's their amusement park and, you know, a miniature amusement park, and that's probably why. And it's not actually that big of a deal that Bandai Namco produced a Mario Kart game. They've done that in the past. They have a long-standing relationship with Nintendo dating all the way back to the Famicom. In fact, Namco was the very first licensed third-party developer on the Famicom, and that relationship has continued. Namco has produced a number of Mario Kart arcade cabinets. There's some that you can find in the United States yourself and check them out. They're really fun. They're super cool. And I believe you can bring in your GameCube memory card and actually import your data. Really weird, but super awesome. But the concept of Nintendo actually being like, okay, here are our biggest characters, use them in VR. And make no mistake, Mario and Koopa and Princess Peach and Toad, yes, Toad, are like the biggest characters Nintendo has, so allowing Bandai Namco to put them in virtual reality is a huge deal, especially when you consider how many of Nintendo's higher-ups have talked about VR recently and pretty much dismissed its potential, being like, oh, we're not sure how that's going to be fun. We don't understand how that's fun. You can read the quotes themselves. I believe it was President Kimishima and Reggie Fils-Aimé who just have kind of looked at VR and said, not for us. We're not interested. And I don't want to jump too far ahead, because whatever the reaction to this game might be, it will take years to solidify into a follow-up product. Like, I'm not saying that Nintendo's going to look at this, see the reaction, and go, whoops, we're canceling the Switch, we're going full VR. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but take a moment here and look at Nintendo's track record of working with third parties like Bandai Namco and being introduced to new ideas, seeing how successful they are, or maybe even not successful, and then taking those ideas and carrying them forward into their own projects. Nintendo takes those ideas and brings them in-house. You don't believe me? Well, look at the Pokemon Company. They've been producing mobile titles for years. Now, mostly puzzle games centered around moving Pikachu heads, but they've been making a lot of money off of mobile games, and I'm sure Nintendo took a look at that, and that's really what led them into releasing their games onto mobile platforms earlier. I think they would have done it eventually regardless, but I feel like having that close relationship with the Pokemon Company and seeing what happened there, they were like, oh, okay, we'll release our games on phones. We can see the success for ourselves because they get a couple of bucks for every sale. Now let's look over at Squaresoft. Remember when Squaresoft made Super Mario RPG? Nintendo liked that idea so much that even when Squaresoft jumped ship and, you know, was doing everything with Sony, Nintendo went on to produce two separate Mario RPGs, Mario and Luigi and Paper Mario. And now we're seeing the Zelda and Fire Emblem series being mashed up with Dynasty Warriors. I mean, separately. You know, it's a Zelda, Dynasty Warriors, and a Fire Emblem Warriors game, just to be clear. And we just saw the announcement of Mario and Rabbids, which is basically XCOM, but Mario has a gun, and it looks bonkers. Who knows how those games are going to influence Nintendo's design approach in the future, right? I mean, we've seen in the past how they take other people's concepts that are brought to them They don't really like to look outside the company, but if somebody brings the concept to them and is using their characters, that's when they start to take that influence. All right, so we've got that out of the way, right? But I'm sure many of you are still kind of rolling your eyes because VR, after all, has kind of a hot and cold reception at the moment. Either you think it is going to be the end-all be-all eventually, or you think VR is just a fad. Or maybe you were formally all in, and then after a month of, using your HTC Vive, you're like, screw this, I don't care anymore, and you've cashed out. I've seen that happen to a lot of people. And I agree, virtual reality still has some major issues when it comes to price and usability, and I'll be the first to admit that VR could totally go away once the bubble bursts, which I admit the bubble is not that big, but it still feels like there's a lot of people vying for VR attention without a obvious leader in the pack. And even the obvious leader is Sony, which that entire situation is messy. We'll get to that later in the chart park. So unless something major happens soon, I don't know what the future of VR is going to be. So for me, the one company that could popularize VR, the one that could really usher in the mainstream appeal of VR as a viable platform, is Nintendo. Now, if you've listened to the Pressurecast before, or at least for a while, you know that I'm often very critical of Nintendo, and I stand behind that. They make a lot of backwards, stupid, silly mistakes. But look at the entire history of Nintendo and you'll see they're at their best when they're solving problems. Look back at the D-pad, on the NES and the Famicom controller. That was the most logical solution to controlling 2D sprites. Now, back in the day, we used joysticks, but the D-pad, it made the most sense. To this day, people still want to use D-pads when they play 2D games. Nintendo solved that problem. Now, look at the diamond shape of the Super Nintendo controller. Just really brilliant if you think about it. Instead of having the Sega Genesis, 3 buttons lined up, which is pretty inconvenient if you think about it, they did a 4-button layout. Makes a lot of sense. Now, look at the Nintendo 64 and the analog setup. Yes, the rest of the controller is a complete mess, but when you look at the Nintendo 64 and the way that they focused on that analog movement, it worked out really well, especially for their first-party games. And then there's the obvious examples like the Wiimote, which brought in a lot of casual players, or the Nintendo Switch, which merged the handheld and console divisions together, or, oh my god, the Nintendo DS, which basically invented modern touchscrene gameplay. You can basically say the mobile market is built off the back of the DS's popularity. You really could, because a lot of those early mobile games were kind of based off of the gimmicks that the DS had. And we're not even talking about game design yet. When Nintendo was solving problems for game design, like, well, how do we do this sort of freeform 3D combat? They created, maybe they didn't create, but they perfected the lock-on camera in Zelda 64, or even the idea of a 3D camera in Mario 64. What I'm saying is, Nintendo is at their best when they're solving problems. When there's something that's just not quite there yet, they know how to come in and fix it. Now, when something is already perfect, like, let's say, online services, Nintendo doesn't know how to handle that kind of stuff. When something's already fixed, they don't know what to do, because they want to put their little stamp on it, and they're not sure where to go with it. But I like to imagine a company like Nintendo entering VR, a company that seems to understand, or at least has a lot of talented people that understand how to solve problems. That's the company I want to see. And if you do play VR games, I'm sure you already know that there are plenty of people working in VR. There are plenty of talented and really smart people creating interesting concepts in VR. Concepts. But once you go into the shop, all you find are a glut of puzzle games and shooting galleries and just really simple titles that just, they have some sort of gameplay, but they have no identity. Like and even the gameplay itself doesn't really connect with the player beyond the kind of initial wow factor. That's kind of the biggest problem right now, is there's no sort of connecting to the player, long form, this is something you can only, Nintendo's really done well with this. Look at something like Mario vs. Donkey Kong, which has no resemblance to a Mario or a Donkey Kong game, and people still attach themselves to those franchises. That's what Nintendo does. And I guess what I'm really trying to say is that no matter the quality of the game, Nintendo has built worlds that people want to actually visit, if you know what I mean here. Like, look at something like, what's the darkest Nintendo franchise you can come up with? Like maybe Fire Emblem, because that is war and death and soldiers killing each other on the battlefield. Still has majestic whimsy to it. Still has an inviting atmosphere. I don't think that's a happy mistake. I think the company's culture and their philosophy bleeds into everything that they make. So when I look at where would I want to go in VR, and I see a subway where I shoot a bunch of people, you know, or some dark and grimy horror game, I don't want to go there. I don't want to spend any time there, right? Maybe I want to go there for a second or two just to have a thrill, but I don't want to stay there. Look at the worlds that Nintendo produces. Look at this Mario Kart VR experience. Driving around, seeing piranha plants chomping at people, flying over long gaps with parachutes and hang gliders. That's a place I actually want to visit. So when it comes down to it, VR needs a direction, and even with the Switch being successful, which it is, so far it's doing very well, Nintendo needs another challenge. They need another problem to solve. And I will once again recognize that price and functionality is a major factor when it comes to the success or failure of virtual reality. Nintendo's entire hardware division in the past has proven they know how to deliver a great experience within a budget. They do. Look at the Wii. Look at the Switch. Very good for the price. It's incredible. Wii U, not so much. Just being real with you. Or even the Famicom or the NES. Really top-notch, almost arcade-level experiences for a really decent price. So yeah, that's basically what I think. I think if you look at where VR is right now, it's very robotic. There's no personality to it. And you look over at Nintendo right now, they are brimming with personality, though I just don't think they have that. They don't have that moment. They don't have that obstacle to overcome. So I think VR and Nintendo, perfect merger. I still stand behind this. Will it ever happen? Maybe, because right now we're going to see how Nintendo reacts to the Mario Kart VR experience over in Japan. And make no mistake, they care most about what happens in Japan. When they see Japanese consumers are happy, they double down on that much more than Western consumers, which is why it took so long to actually get another Metroid game. Metroid is popular over here, not very popular over in Japan, so they didn't make another one. So crossing my fingers, one way or another, Nintendo, get into VR. Come on. Hey, I mean, you could even do the Gear VR, the thing that goes on the phones. Do that. Just saying. Anyway, toot toot. Moving over to more Nintendo news. Remember how I said Nintendo sometimes makes stupid choices? Well, one of those was launching the Nintendo Switch without any sort of video streaming service. So if you like Netflix or Hulu or YouTube or anything that we have on modern hardware, well, that was completely absent when the Nintendo Switch launched. And they still are. But finally, Nintendo will add one video provider. The Japanese website, Nico Nico, a sort of Japanese YouTube, which, is a bit of an unfair comparison because Nico Nico actually launched in 2006, which is only a year after YouTube. Even though it's virtually non-existent outside of Japan, Nico Nico is fairly popular there, being the 7th most popular website in the entire country and the 112th most popular website in the entire world. Pretty impressive. So yeah, good news for Japanese Nintendo Switch owners, while everyone else in the world has to settle for trailers on the eShop. And I don't believe you'll be able to download Nico Nico without having a Japanese account, which is super easy. You can just look into it, just create a alternate email address. That's what I did, and I have a Japanese Switch account on top of my American Switch account. And I know this all seems kind of silly to be upset about video streaming services because, hey, if you really want Netflix or if you really want, YouTube, you can just watch it on your phone, or you can watch it on your television. Most TVs have Netflix built in. But you'd think Nintendo would want people to use their consoles as often as possible, rather than putting the console down and pulling out their phone, or putting the console down and turning on their Xbox or their PlayStation 4 or walking over to their PC. You'd think Nintendo would want to retain those people focusing solely on their hardware and becoming attached to it. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. I think it's important. You let me know what you think. Toot toot. Up next, we have two tiny Nintendo Switch stories. I swear we're going to be talking about other platforms. I swear we're going to be talking about Xbox and Sony in just a moment. But just, come on, relax. There was a lot of Nintendo news this week. We got two final stories right here. Anyway, Bandai Namco, who we were just talking about, have finally confirmed the release date for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, which, of course, was released last year on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 and PC, but will finally come to the Nintendo Switch on September 22nd. I actually reviewed this game on the PlayStation 4 last year. You can actually go to youtube.com/videogamesardone and watch my review of that game. But let's just say, if you don't want to watch that review, I'll just say it right here. That game is truly, truly awful. It is awful in almost every respect. The graphics look washed out. The gameplay is essentially one combo. And the story is an absolute joke. That's really. I did not enjoy that game. And I do like Dragon Ball Z. And in case you don't believe me, I'm not going to put any spoilers in here or anything. But the story is so bad. It's about time travel We're going all around the Dragon Ball universe where people are trying to change the timelines and you have to set everything right. So you go into that universe, you go into these different timelines, and they're basically the exact same thing as a Dragon Ball episode, except you're there. Your created character is there instead of Goku. I don't care about my created character. I want to play as Goku. And if we're going to do this whole time travel thing, why not change a few things? Why not have it be like, whoa, Goku never landed on Earth or something, and now the Saiyans are going to take over? Something interesting. But nope, it's just basically, Frieza and Goku are fighting, but you're there to help Goku fight Frieza. Who cares? Game sucked. Anyway, toot toot. And also in related news, 2K Games has confirmed their latest wrestling game, WWE 2K18, will also be coming to the Nintendo Switch sometime this fall. They didn't give an exact date. According to the company, 2K will see many improvements in visuals, though they actually have yet to show off a trailer where there's actual graphics being shown off. No word on how this is going to be affected, because they did just cancel the 360 and PlayStation 3 iterations, and now they're focusing exclusively on the Xbox, PC, PlayStation 4, and I guess now Switch. But you might want to expect a little bit of a downgrade in visuals, I assume. Anyway, in case you don't follow me on Twitter, or I guess you just don't listen to the show long enough, I enjoy pro wrestling. I really do. I really love pro wrestling, and I love the Nintendo Switch. It's a fantastic piece of hardware. It's fantastic that it's getting more third-party support. But honestly, I couldn't care less about this. These games have absolutely no direction whatsoever. It's just warmed over gameplay mechanics from 2004. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I'm really not. Go back and pop out a PlayStation 2 and play SmackDown vs. Raw from over a decade ago, and you'll notice that the gameplay is nearly identical. They've sped it up, they've slowed it down, but it has pretty much been the exact same, which is really shitty. Hey, if you do want a good wrestling game, though, I highly recommend that you go and seek out some emulators for the Nintendo 64 and play the mods that are out there for No Mercy, which of course was a game from the early 2000s, or Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, another great game. But there are mods out there that take the modern roster and put it into No Mercy, which is infinitely better than the current glut of wrestling games. I don't hate 2K18 or the 2K series. I think they're fine. They're just old. They're so old. They're so old that an old game feels new. That's saying a lot. Toot toot. All right, let's move to the opposite of pro wrestling. Let's talk about Japanese role-playing games. Let's talk about Sony. Level 5 has announced that their upcoming sequel, Ni no Kuni 2, has been delayed into 2018. This was originally scheduled for November 10th, but it will now launch on January 19th of next year for the PlayStation 4 and PC. I didn't even know it was coming to PC until I saw this story. No specific reason was given for the delay, though the head of Level 5, Akihiro Hino, I got that name right, claimed that this extra time would ensure quality. He also went on to dispel the rumor that Ni no Kuni 2 would feature any sort of multiplayer, stating that it will remain a single-player title, just like the original. Now, I saw online that some people were really disappointed that Ni no Kuni 2 is not going to be out this year. That's cool. I understand your disappointment, but me personally, I'm really happy it happened. See, the fall season is way too busy for lengthy JRPGs, at least for me. I'm trying to review games. There's no way I can sit down and play a 50 to 60 hour long game when there's like 5 12-hour games coming out in a week. It's just not possible for me. And personally, I think that the late January period, and this is just me personally, has always been my favorite time to play Japanese games. That is my absolute favorite time to play Japanese games. I don't know why that is. I even remember a few years ago when I played Yakuza 1 on the PlayStation 2 and I streamed it on YouTube, I actually played it in late January just because that's when I associate my time with Japanese games. And then when Yakuza 0 came out in late January, I thought that was so cool. And then, of course, the springtime, there was lots of things like Nier Automata and Persona 5. I like playing Japanese games in spring. I don't know why, but it just fits perfectly. So if you were looking forward to Ni no Kuni 2, sorry, but good news for me. I can't wait. It does look fantastic. Toot toot. Speaking of release dates, Sony has confirmed Gran Turismo Sport will arrive on October 17th in America and October 18th in Europe. This marks the first entry in the series since 2013's Gran Turismo 6. And that's basically the entire story right there, but I did want to talk a little bit about Gran Turismo as a franchise, as a whole, because I'm a little worried about it. And I'm a little worried about this game too, not for the quality. I think Gran Turismo has always been a good game. It's always been top-notch. I think Gran Turismo Sport is going to be fantastic because they've never made a bad Gran Turismo. They never have. But I get the feeling that this entry is really important to the series. Because you look at Gran Turismo's sales since it started, and it used to be one of Sony's biggest hits. It would always sell over 10 million units. But Part 6, which was out in 2013, was a major disappointment. Apparently it only sold 3.32 million units, which makes it the worst selling entry in the franchise. Like, just bar none. Even outside of even their prologue series, which aren't even complete games, they're like paid demos, those sold better than Gran Turismo 6. It did outsell Gran Turismo on the PSP, so I guess it has that going for it, but Gran Turismo 6 totally flatlined, and you can point to a lot of reasons why. You could say, oh, it's because the PlayStation 4 came out that fall. But even then, usually when a console is wrapping up, they still sell a lot of games. A lot of games because they have a bigger install base. So you can't really point to that as an excuse. Not to mention, if you look at the franchise as a whole, just in terms of what they put inside of their games, they usually escalate. You look at Gran Turismo 4, that had over 700 cars. You look at Gran Turismo 5, that had over 1,000 cars. You look at Gran Turismo Sport, that has less than 200 cars. And that's the lowest number since the original game back in 1997. And I'm not saying, I want to make this clear, I'm not saying that Sony's going to flush the entire franchise down the toilet if this game bombs. I don't think it will bomb, and I don't think Sony would give up on it regardless, because it has a strong name, and Sony has given a lot of chances to less successful franchises. But it really seems like Sony pulled Polyphony aside and kind of told them to focus a little bit more. Like, maybe we don't need 1,000 cars. Maybe we don't need you to take 5 years to make a game. Just try to make something smaller. And, but by the time this game comes out, it still will have been 4 years, but it certainly looks smaller. Looks good, but smaller. Maybe it's just me. Toot toot. Alright, now on to some sad news. Last year, Q Games launched the PlayStation 4 exclusive, The Tomorrow Children, which was a unique multiplayer city-building game featuring Soviet iconography and music. It was super cool, or at least I liked it. Now director Dylan Cuthberg has confirmed via Twitter that The Tomorrow Children will be wrapping up later this year. Here's what he said, quote, "It was a very fun and different game to the usual fare, but The Tomorrow Children will be closing in November. Your last chance to play ever." End quote. When asked why the game was closing, Cuthberg stated, quote, "A few reasons, but primarily it is just a lot of hard work keeping a game like this running constantly, while also creating content and getting users in." End quote. I gotta say, the story really bums me out, because I really like The Tomorrow Children. In fact, if you want to see what The Tomorrow Children was like, you can go to youtube.com/videogamesardumb. Check out my episode of First Hour about The Tomorrow Children. I think it's the best episode of the First Hour I ever made. It really covers what that game was, what the essence of The Tomorrow Children is. Or you can go and play it for yourself, because I think it was always free to play. Though you wanted to purchase items because it made the game a lot easier. I feel like the game should have been paid rather than free to play, personally. But you can go on PlayStation Network and download the game. It's not going to be wrapping up until November. But basically, The Tomorrow Children was this really abstract game where you played as a clone, everyone looked identical, and you were inside this thing called the Void, which was a big, empty white space, and essentially it alluded to the fact that the world had ended, which is super fascinating, and you have to get on these buses that take you for a ride in real time to these strange mining sites that always resemble things from the real world, like really abstract, and you break them down and you collect all the resources, you throw them on the bus, and eventually the mining location crumbles to the ground. It's super weird, and I get that it's not really for everyone. It's not the most compelling game in terms of just immediacy and gameplay, and I understand why the reviews were not kind to it. I saw reviews that were as low as 3 out of 10, but there's nothing really else like it, and I found the game to be particularly relaxing. So maybe it's just me. But as for the director, Dylan Cuthberg, I'm sure he'll land back on his feet. He's been a veteran in the industry. In fact, he was the lead programmer on Star Fox 1 and Star Fox 2 on the Super Nintendo. So technically with the SNES Mini, he has another game coming out this year. Technically. It's just sad to see The Tomorrow Children go. And we could have an entire conversation about video game preservation and what does this mean, but we won't. Anyway. Toot toot. Resident Evil is once again resurrecting one of its old titles for a current-gen re-release. 2012's Revelations, which was originally launched on the 3DS, will arrive on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One later this fall, and it will include all of the DLC from the original. So if you've never played it before, this is probably your best experience. And that's really the whole story right there, but I think it's worth pointing out, Capcom is running out of Resident Evils to re-release. Seriously, I didn't notice until this story how many Resident Evils they put out. They re-released the remake on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. The original GameCube game, right? They just re-released that on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Then they re-released Code Veronica. Then they re-released Part 4, Part 5, Part 6. They even got physical releases for store shelves. And I think that's everything that they re-released so far. So unless they want to do something like Outbreak or Gun Survivor or maybe that Game Boy Color game, there's nothing else to re-release. Unless they plan on putting out a collection that has maybe Part 2 and Nemesis. I'd play it. Just saying. Alright, fine. Toot toot. Let's move over to Xbox news to talk about the 3 latest additions to backwards compatibility. They are as follows: Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, Earth Defense Force, Insect Armageddon, and F1 2014. That's the whole list. It's pretty solid. Unless you own a PlayStation 4 or PC. And that's not a jab at Xbox. I like Xbox. I really do. But, you know, Street Fighter 5 is out there. You can play on the PlayStation 4 or PC. I guess if you don't have either, you can play Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition. Great game. Holds up perfectly fine. It's one of the best fighting games of all time. So that's really cool. As for Earth Defense Force, well, Insect Armageddon isn't really the best entry. I think it was the only one that was ever made in the West as opposed to Japanese developers. It's alright. I'm not big into it, but yeah, it was an okay week. F1 2014 if you want to relive the glory days of 2014. If you want to. Anyway, toot. Back to I gotta start that over. Back in 2015, Nintendo launched Super Mario Maker, a game where players could create their very own stages in the vein of 2D Mario games. This led many fans to speculate what else could be adopted into this format. While other fans decided to just speculate, other fans decided to take it on themselves and develop their very own game, which is why we have Mega Maker. That is right, a group known as Wrecking Programs has released Mega Maker, a game where fans use the iconic enemies and locations of Mega Man to create their very own levels with 129 tile sets, 40 backgrounds, 29 objects, 46 enemies, and 12 bosses from the original 6 entries. As a fan game, it currently and likely will always remain PC exclusive, so don't expect this to be coming to your Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One anytime soon. It is free to download though, so just look up Mega Maker. It's out right now. And also you can upload the levels that you created to a server, which is super cool. So, if you've been listening to this show long enough, you probably think you know how this story is going to go. I mean, after all, we've seen dozens of fan projects that get announced, they launch, and then they are promptly squashed by a cease and desist from the actual copyright holders. That's just what happens. And that's almost what happened here, because as I just mentioned, the created stages go on a server. Well, the team, Wrecking Programs, actually put out a Patreon to have people support them just for servers. Nothing else, just for servers. Then they realized that they would probably get shut down if they did this, so they closed their Patreon before anyone donated. That's a really smart move. Good for them. But the funny thing about this story is that there were a lot of people saying, wow, they're finally making a Super Mario Maker for Mega Man. But in actuality, Capcom had the idea before they ever announced Super Mario Maker. See, back in 2010, there was this game called Mega Man Universe that basically let you make your very own Mega Man stages, and it was canceled for some reason. We never got a clear answer on that. So before you go and call Mega Maker a ripoff of Mario Maker, just remember Mario Maker is a ripoff of Mega Man Universe. Kind of. Anyway, toot. Let's talk about the games that are going to be out this week. On Tuesday, Yonder, the Cloudcatcher Chronicles will be on the PC and PlayStation 4. Orcs Must Die Unchained will be on the PlayStation 4. On Wednesday, Moon Hunters will be out on the Xbox One. Tangled Deep will be on the PC. What Remains of Edith Finch will be on the Xbox One. On Thursday, Lone Echo will be on the PC. Leighton Mystery Journey, Caitlin and the Millionaire's Conspiracy will be out on Android. and iPhone. We never get to talk about mobile games, so that's kind of cool. Gigantic will be on the Xbox One and PC on Friday. Splatoon 2 will be on the Switch. I can't wait for that to be out. And Fortnite will be on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. So whether you got a Switch or you've got a PlayStation 4, Xbox One, or PC, lots of good games coming out this week. Boop, boop. That's going to do it for the Hype Train. Well, thank you very much, Hype Train. Thank you very much. But man, all this hype kind of smells bad in here. I want to step outside, get some fresh air. Ooh, I know a place that's always warm with the glow of cold hard cash. That's right, it's time for the Chart Park, the land where money grows on trees. Yes, the Chart Park. This is the part of the show where we talk about the legal, business, and financial news in the video game industry, and we talk about all those fat cats making that money, tipping their top hats towards Lady Luck, if you know what I'm saying. Probably don't. We're going to start off the Chart Park by talking about an ending. Starting with an ending? Who does that? Well, Nintendo does. Nintendo of Japan and Europe have announced the end of production for the new 3DS. If you're wondering why America didn't make a similar announcement, it's because we never really had the new 3DS here. And that's really the entire story right there. Nintendo doesn't usually accompany any sort of news with lengthy interviews or context or anything like that. So that's it. The new 3DS is over. And to be clear, that does not mean that's going to be happening to the new 3DS XL or the new 2DS. This is just the new 3DS, the one that was smaller, that had the same functionality like built-in amiibo support and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, we keep track of the charts here. We look at what consoles sell over in Japan. And even there, they didn't really buy the new 2DS. They went for the new 3D, they didn't really buy the new 3DS. They bought the new 3DS XL. And if I had to guess, they're probably just trying to save some money on manufacturing. I mean, after all, Nintendo is about to launch the new 2DS later this month. Not to mention the Nintendo Switch is taking off worldwide. Why do they want to keep producing a low-selling console? They don't. That's why they're getting rid of it. But I think it's pretty clear, regardless of, you know, what's sticking around, that we're entering the final phase of the Nintendo 3DS, which really shouldn't come as a surprise because it's been 6 years, and even the DS, for as popular as that was, ended production 7 years after it was launched. So that makes sense. So how much longer does the 3DS have? Well, if the DS is any indication, probably 2 years, because they launched the 3DS in 2011, and then they canceled the regular DS in 2013, and that was a really popular console, hugely popular. So I doubt we'll see as many games leading up to 2019, when they will likely cancel the 3DS altogether. This is just my assumption. This is just me guessing. This is not confirmed. But I think I'm right. And I suppose now is as good a time as any to reflect back on exactly what the 3DS was, which in my opinion was a pretty good handheld. Great if you exclude the ports, but I mean, how could you? Seriously, go back and look at the best rated 3DS games. Most of them were remakes of old Nintendo games and ports of indie titles. But of course, it had its very own high notes. I'm a huge fan of the 3DS Fire Emblem games. Thought they were amazing. I think they were the best in an already great series, and that's saying a lot. I love some of the eShop exclusives like Pushmo. I think Pushmo deserves to be on the Switch, and I want to see Pushmo, the character, in the brand new Smash Brothers whenever that's announced. And of course, they were, you know, continuations of series like Pokemon X and Y were fantastic. We got an amazing Zelda game in Link Between Worlds, and Monster Hunter actually became pretty popular here in the United States thanks to the 3DS. And I think that's about it, which is weird because I'm running out of things to say about a console from 2011, something that's been around for 6 years, over half a decade. There's not much to say about it. I guess I could say that I'm really disappointed more people didn't appreciate the 3D functionality. I thought glasses-free 3D looked amazing. It worked really well, especially on the new 3DS, but most people just didn't like it because I guess it cost battery life or they didn't like the way that it looked. So I'm the odd one out there, but I like the 3DS. But even then, even though I like the 3DS, it never came close to the DS in terms of quality or importance. Basically a solid system, but one that lacked an identity of its own. Probably because it had the exact same form factor of a more popular console, the DS. But if you really enjoy Nintendo handhelds, I'd say you need to appreciate the 3DS. Not because it was the best handheld they ever produced, but because it's probably the last. Because if you look at the Switch, despite the fact that it's being portable or whatever, it's not really a handheld. It's a hybrid of a console and a portable. It's not a handheld. So I think this is probably the end of, you know, handhelds altogether. And after 30 years, that's not a bad run. Nintendo did the most that they could. But let me know what you thought about the 3DS overall. I thought it was good. I did. But if I'm being honest, in terms of gameplay experiences, it wasn't that much better than the Vita. For me. I adored many of the games on there, especially Fire Emblem, and Super Mario 3D Land is probably my favorite Mario game since the NES. I really love that game. But overall, it was good. It was good. Real good. Great sometimes. But not quite as good as the DS for me. Not enough Castlevania. Anyway, let's move on. We've got another bite-sized Nintendo story. Last week, the company announced in its annual report that it's giving, in case you don't know, annual reports, before we go any further, Nintendo puts out these annual reports to give their investors like a deeper insight on what happened the previous year, and also giving them a hint as to what they're going to be doing in the future, right? That's what this is all about, just trying to inform the people that are giving them money or putting money into the company. But the most surprising aspect of this entire report was the inclusion of quality of life. That's right, quality of life. Here's the exact quote from the report. Quote, new product that improves people's QQL, quality of life, in enjoyable ways. End quote. They actually referenced it. And in case you don't really remember this, well, the concept was first introduced by the late president Satoru Iwata way back in 2014. Way back in 2014. Iwata, I believe, used the example of a sleep monitor, and then Nintendo basically went silent on the project. Only every now and again being like, oh yeah, we're working on that. It's not done yet. No one knows what this quality of life thing is actually going to be. Now, I know a lot of people, myself included, laughed at this quality of life thing when it was first mentioned, because at the time the Wii U was bombing and they're talking about sleep monitors. It's like, what the hell is wrong with Nintendo? Focus on the games, right? Well, in hindsight, it's starting to make more and more sense. I mean, sure, the Switch is selling really well, and, you know, we're coming off of the Wii U. That was a total bomb, so it seems like everything's getting back to normal. But if Nintendo had some sort of portfolio diversity outside of just video games, they probably would have been able to weather the Wii U a lot better. Look at what they're doing right now. They're building amusement parks. There's conversations about them making, things based off of their properties. Maybe television shows, maybe Netflix things. We don't know. The rumors are out there, and there are certainly interviews that would allude to the idea of them taking their properties and putting them outside the realm of video games. And you never know what the future is going to bring in video games. Like, will we even have consoles in 10 years? That's really up for debate. Yeah, I say probably we will, but there are other people that say we might not have consoles at all. There maybe something else will come along that just, maybe phones will advance to the point where we're just plugging them into our TVs. You don't know. Maybe they'll be able to expand to be as large as our TVs. Maybe phones will become our brand new bosses and we're working for our phones. We're working from phone. Okay, that's a fan fiction I'm working on. But the point is, what is Nintendo going to do when hardware eventually evaporates? Because it's going to have to eventually, right? Right? It has to at some point. They're going to lose all the profits that they make from hardware. So if they're smart, which they are, even though they make stupid mistakes a lot of times, this whole quality of life thing is going to solve that. And it's probably not the only project that they're working on right now. We know for a fact that they're going to be working on amusement parks, but yes, the reference to quality of life, it's super cool because they need something outside of just games and consoles. And so yeah, good idea. And besides, Iwata came up with it. He had a lot of good ideas. You like that? Moving on. And lastly for Nintendo, the company recently revealed Super Mario Run, their mobile Mario title, has been downloaded over 150 times. However, only 10% of players went on to actually purchase the full title for $10. Nintendo's president Kimishima went on to explain they've used this game as a learning experience, pointing out that their free-to-play game, Fire Emblem Heroes, is that what it's called? Fire Emblem Heroes? I believe it's called Fire Emblem Heroes. Has actually brought in more money than Super Mario Run. Super Mario Run was released on the iOS platform back in December and recently released on Android back in March. I see a lot of comments on this story saying, take that Nintendo, you should have known better. You should have known better. You made a big mistake pricing that game at $10 and that's why you're getting punished. Couldn't disagree more. Could not. Nintendo makes lots of mistakes that are worth criticizing, but charging $10 for a mobile game is not one of them, because they can just drop the price to $5 right now. It's no big deal. And if you really think price was the issue, they'll make that money back. because they can just make it go down. They can't make the price go up. That would be a mistake, but they can make the price go down. And besides that, they're the only Mario game, official Mario game on the market, so they got that covered. Besides, this was an experiment. Nintendo wanted to learn more about how people would react to Nintendo games on their phones. I mean, they released Miitomo, which was, I don't know what you would even call that. Not a game. It was something, but it was not a game. It's hard to believe no one cares about Miitomo anymore. It was less than a year ago people were using Miitomo. It's crazy. More than a year ago. But no one talks about it anymore. So this was their first major outing with Mario. They had to use this as an example. And this means that looking at how Fire Emblem is doing and looking at how Mario is doing, they are going to be going on and probably producing more games centered around microtransactions. And you can't really criticize them for that. You cannot complain about them using microtransactions and also complain that Super Mario Run is $10. You can't. It had to be either or. They had to figure out the solution to this. Now, personally, I hope they continue with the premium price for premium games. I think that makes sense. I think that's the right way to go. I think that they still need to re-educate the mobile audience as to what you get, what value actually is in video games, rather than just playing garbage that and spending $4. Why not spend $10 and get something that's actually pretty good? But, you know, if Nintendo says, nope, we don't care, we're just going to go back to microtransactions like we did with Fire Emblem, can't blame them. Don't have to like it, but you can't blame them. Anyway, moving on. Way back in the salad days of March 2016, the plucky VR headset known as the Oculus Rift landed on store shelves with a $599 price tag. Later that December, it was joined by the Torch controllers, a pair of motion inputs that retailed at $199. However, by the end of the year, SuperData estimated that only 355,000 headsets had been sold worldwide, with Epic Games' Tim Sweeney. Now, I want to make sure this is clear. This is one source. We have the source right here. We don't know if this is true, but Epic Games' Tim Sweeney claiming that the HTC Vive was outselling the Rift 2-1. Is that true? Ask Tim Sweeney. I don't know. But following its slow start, Oculus has begun slowly cutting down its price, reaching a brand new low of $500 for both the headset and the controllers. That's less than $300 than their launch price, as well as a temporary sale of $400. So that's like 50% off of their original launch price. Kind of crazy. But in related news, Bloomberg is reporting that Oculus is currently developing a $200 standalone headset with an intended release date of 2018. Wow, just like Kingdom Hearts. Codename Pacific will heavily resemble the Gear VR headset, though it'll apparently be lighter and not require a mobile phone slotted in, using the Snapdragon CPU actually in the device itself. Of course, Oculus has yet to comment on those rumors. So, this is actually a pretty big story, if you ask me. I think it's obvious that when you look at these price cuts that the Rift is performing well below expectations, which has a few troubling signs from a few different angles. First of all, this is an experimental piece of technology that is being sold on store shelves. So if Facebook is going into this thinking that they're going to make a big profit, they're making a huge mistake. It doesn't matter that this is mass produced. It doesn't matter that you can buy it at Best Buy. VR is a very young technology, and it still has yet to find its true application beyond just being neat. We don't know what that is yet. So Facebook, you need to relax. You can't be having high expectations. You got to be thinking about the long term here. This is stage one, and sales are slowly going to grow over time. Look at Facebook itself. It was technology. It started off, and it wasn't very, very big. It was just, one college, and it grew into the entire world. You got to be patient when it comes to technology, especially new concepts. But I will give them credit. They're doing something right. They're cutting down the price, and they're putting it on par with the best-selling headset in terms of price, the PlayStation VR. That's right, PlayStation VR is $500 with all of its stuff. Is it? No, just the headset is $500. Just the headset's $500, and now you're going to be spending $500. You're going to get these two amazing controllers and a much better headset. Well, if you don't count the Gear VR, like that's the cheapest headset around, but you really shouldn't count that. But I think one of the major problems that Oculus keeps encountering is that or at least they were encountering, is that they were too expensive, and the HTC Vive is a better product in almost every conceivable way. And if you're a fan of Oculus, I'm not making fun of you or anything like that. I'm just saying that, like, let's really think about this. When you have that price point, $800. Now, they don't have that price point anymore, but when they did, they had a price point that was $800. you're going after a very specific audience, two very specific audience. You're going after rich people, or at least people with a lot of disposable income. They're like, oh, cool, VR, I'll buy that. And second, you're going after hardcore VR fans, like the true blue diehard believers. They are going to be going with this technology until whenever. If it stops or if it continues, they're never leaving VR because they believe in VR. So if someone makes a vastly superior headset, the rich people and the diehard VR fans are going to be going over there. There's no brand loyalty. They just want the best experience. That's all they care about. So now they're going after a different kind of audience. By cutting down the price to $500, they're going after someone that still is willing to put in at least $1,000 on their PC. They're putting in a lot of expensive parts into their PC, but they found that $800 price tag too expensive. So cutting it down to $500, I think that's right. I think it makes it more affordable because you're going to people that are on the fence. They're not the true blue diehards. They're not the super wealthy people that just buy whatever. You're going after people that like their PCs enough to spend a lot of money and are interested in technology, but before it was prohibitively expensive. But when it comes right down to it, I think this rumor about a standalone headset, that's what I find to be most interesting. And I really hope Facebook, if this is true in fact, I hope Facebook knows what they're getting into, because this standalone headset is not going to outsell the Gear VR. It just won't. It can't. In case you don't know, the Gear VR is this thing that you buy. It's a piece of plastic with goggles on it, and you slap your phone in there, and it costs $99. Almost everyone I know that owns one of these got it for free from Verizon or T-Mobile. They just give them away at phone shops. That's why the Gear VR is doing so well. How many people actually use it on a week-to-week basis? I don't know anybody, but it sold well because they were giving it away, even though technically that money still goes back to Oculus. But if they make this standalone headset, they need to understand that they're going to be starting over. They're going to be creating a consumer level headset rather than catering the enthusiast market. They need to adapt to that. They need to understand that and then just chill and be patient, just like with Oculus. And I hope it works out. I hope that the screen of this standalone Snapdragon powered headset is good enough, good enough to look on par with the standalone, not standalone, the Gear VR. That's going to be the tricky part, because how are you going to produce something that has an OLED screen and has all the power to play those games under $200? That's going to be tricky unless they sell it at a loss, which, considering where Oculus is right now, I don't think they will. But yes, I hope this works out and I hope people respond positively. Just saying. Anyway, moving on. The accessory playing field just got a little bit smaller. Last week, Logitech announced that they had purchased Astro Gaming, best known for their premium brand of wireless headphones like the X51s. I used to own one of those headsets. I can't really remember. Logitech spent somewhere in the range of $85 million to purchase them. And according to Logitech's vice president, Yujis Desai, we're going to go with that. Yujis Desai? That's his name. We'll go with that. They will continue the Astro brand lineup. They're not canceling it. They're not folding it in. They're going to continue the lineup. Here's what he said. Quote, "The Astro brand and their awesome products aren't going anywhere. Pissed." He wrote psst. He wrote psst. But I just said pissed instead. Psst. "If you haven't seen their latest A10 headset, you should check it out here." And then he put a link in his blog post. End quote. For me, looking at this news, I think it's great that Astro is going to be getting a little bit of a notoriety bump. But it really makes you wonder what's going to happen to the Logitech brand of headphones. Logitech puts out their very own game headphones. Are they going to retire those? Are they going to rebrand those as Astros? Which wouldn't be great because the Logitech headphones are simply nowhere near as good as Astros. But either way, Logitech made a huge move right here. They've become the go-to source for a wide range of accessories, which is kind of concerning if you're worried about monopolies, especially with Mad Cats being dead. Mad Cats died, of course, last year. This basically leaves Logitech, Razer, and Hori as the only people that make meaningful accessories, which, isn't much. I mean, seriously, go to Logitech's history. You can find one on Wikipedia. You can find one on their own corporate website. Look at the activities that Logitech has engaged in over the past decade. It's just acquisition after acquisition after acquisition. They own Jaybird, the sports earbuds. Bet you didn't know that. I certainly didn't. They purchased Cytec, the flight stick manufacturer. I think they bought them from Mad Cats, in fact, if I'm not mistaken. So they basically own accessories right now, with the exception of Razer and the exception of Hori. I guess Razer would be the second biggest, and then Hori is well below that because they basically just focus on fight sticks. Though on the bright side, I guess that they've managed to keep the Jaybird and they've kept the Jaybird brand really strong. So there's that at least. Kind of cool. Anyway, moving on. We're going to be talking about theft. That's right, theft. Robbery, stealing, borrowing without asking. It's all the same if you ask me. And that's exactly what happened over at itch.io. In case you don't know, itch.io is a PC game marketplace. And it recently came under some scrutiny when it was discovered that it was selling copies of Dead Cells and RimWorld, independent titles, that were being sold well below their standard price. And for good reason. Those games, those copies of those games were stolen. They were thieved. They were borrowed without asking. And it's all the same if you ask me. In fact, the developers of both games were completely unaware that their games were even being sold on the marketplace, which is pretty bad. Itch.io responded quickly, stating, and this is a long quote here, but here's what they said, quote, "Since we're an open marketplace, there have been attempts at scamming in the past, but we always catch them before anything happens. This time was a bit different. As with all scammers, we have suspended their accounts immediately and banned their payment information from the system and banned those files from being sold. This particular scammer is also taking advantage of direct payment mode that we originally offered that allows a seller to skip itch.io and sell directly into their PayPal account. We're going to be heavily restricting this feature in the foreseeable future. We're reaching out to the customers affected by this individual's actions for refunds. We'd like to thank our community for helping us identify these non-legitimate pages with the speed and understanding that they have." What? With the speed and understanding that they have. Whatever. End quote. So that's basically the entire story right there, but let it be a lesson to all you thieves, you crimers, you stealers, you borrowers without askingers. It's all the same. And if itch.io finds out, you're going down, chump. Moving on. So I don't know about you, but I have a lot of subscription services. I got my Netflix, got my WWE Network, got Xbox Live, got PlayStation Network, got Marvel Unlimited. I've got a lot of subscription services. But you might assume there's too many, that there's no room for another subscription service. But you'd be wrong, because Jump is coming later this year. Yes, Jump is a $10 a month subscription service that grants access to a library of indie games such as Tesla Grad, The Bridge, Mole Men Must Die, and more, with over 60 games confirmed, which are then streamed to the user. You don't download them, you stream them. A closed beta is currently running, and it will be ending on July 24th if you want to check it out. And of course, it's on PC only. Whew, you know, I read this story and I was like, oh, that's really neat. There's like a Netflix or Spotify for independent video games. Super cool. But it doesn't really make any sense. See, here's the thing. Like, yeah, the good news about this is that it could expose games to a wider audience. But who exactly is that audience? People that like indie games? Aren't they more likely to find these games on their own or actually search out independent games? They don't need something that's going to be curated for them. And it's not like indie games are so demanding that they need to be streamed. You know, you can download an indie game in like, what, 2 minutes? Most indie games are very, 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 very small. Now, Jump is saying that, no, you want us because we're going to curate the best indie games, which is great. That sounds awesome. But why don't I just read the list and then go buy the game? Because $10 a month, it's not expensive, but neither are most indie games, you know? And if you're a fan of indie games, aren't you more likely to want to give the money directly to the developer rather than kind of this whole workaround thing? I don't know. I guess it's cool. Whatever. Anyway, in a strange turn of events, Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood has received a number of DDoS attacks since the beginning of the month. However, Square Enix's latest efforts have apparently countered the attackers. Quote, "Since July, the attacks have shifted away from Final Fantasy XIV game servers, and the target has changed to focus on the upper-tier internet service providers that are required to connect to the data center. These attacks to the upper-tier ISP networks are causing lapses in communication to the game servers, giving rise to instant disconnections during logins. There is the possibility that the attacks could occur again. Therefore, we seek to strengthen our cooperation with the upper-tier ISPs and continue observing our defenses, or continue observing our defenses." That is just crazy. Seriously, who did Square Enix piss off that they were trying to shut down Final Fantasy XIV through DDoS attacks? What did they do? Why is this happening? I don't know. Let me know if you know in the comments below, because I looked this up, I couldn't find anything. Anyway, let's get onto the charts. We have the 10 best-selling games over in the UK for the past week. Let's find out what sold. Number 10 was Horizon Zero Dawn. Number 9 was Rocket League. Number 8 was Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Number 7 was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Number 6 was Battlefield 1. Number 5 was Micro Machines World Series. Number 4 was FIFA 17. Number 3 was Overwatch. Number 2 was Grand Theft Auto 5. And number 1 for the second week in a row was Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, which means it's more than a fluke. That game is selling really well all around the world, so keep your eyes peeled. Activision probably will make a standalone, brand new Crash Bandicoot video game in the future. That's what they said. They said they would do that if the game sold well. 2 weeks in a row, it's in the top spot. That's saying a lot. Now let's go over to the cursed land of bullet trains known as Japan and find out what the 10 best-selling games over there. Starting off with number 10, Pokemon Sun and Moon on the 3DS, followed by Grand Theft Auto 5 at number 9 on the PlayStation 4, Monster Hunter Double Cross on the 3DS at number 8, Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology on the 3DS at number 7, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild on the Nintendo Switch at number 6, Omega Labyrinth Z on the PlayStation Vita at number 5, Omega Labyrinth Z on the PlayStation 4 at number 4. I love that. PlayStation 4 at number 4. Awesome. ARMS on the Nintendo Switch at number 3. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Nintendo Switch at number 2. And number 1 was Gundam Versus on the PlayStation 4. Of course it is. They love giant robots over there. Now let's go over to find out what the best-selling consoles for the week. Consoles. Starting off with the Nintendo Switch with 26,256, PlayStation 4 with 22,704, new 3DS LL with 11,849, PlayStation 4 Pro with 7,067, PlayStation Vita with 4,572, 2DS with 2,196, new 3DS. So remember that we were just talking about this? This is why they're canceling the new 3DS. New 3DS only brought in 845, Wii U with 164, PlayStation 3 with 148, and in last place, after 3 weeks of not being in last place, it's back in last place, is the Xbox One with 72. Just stick with it, Microsoft. You're gonna do it! You're gonna pull it off, I promise, one day. Well, that's gonna have to do it for the Chart Park, the land where money grows on trees. Alright, we've come to the final segment of the show. This is the part of the show where we take a look back at the week that was 10 years ago and beyond in something we like to call Strong History. 11 years ago, on the PlayStation Portable, aka the PSP, Miami Vice, the game, was released. I just like to remind people that they made a game based off of Michael Mann's 2007 film, Miami Vice, which was based off of the 1980 series, and it was only released on the PSP and no other consoles. Kind of fascinating. But I want you to hear what one person has to say on Amazon.com. That's right, I found a 5-star review of this game, and I think it will really give you some insight. Here's what it says. Quote, worked fine, no problems, liked new condition, end quote. 5 stars, can't argue with that. Fantastic. Up next, back in 11 years ago, on the PlayStation 2, Super Dragon Ball Z was released on the PlayStation 2. If you watched this year's E3 press conference, you probably saw Dragon Ball Fighter Z, which impressed fans for its detailed graphics based off of the show, and surprised fighting fans by having a competent developer with Arc System Works, the same people that make Guilty Gear. But I think it's sad that so many people have forgotten about Super Dragon Ball Z. First of all, the project lead was a guy named, and I'm going to try and get this right here, Noritaka Funzumi. Close enough. But this was a man who produced Street Fighter 3, Marvel vs. Street Fighter. Not to be confused with Marvel vs. Capcom, Marvel vs. Street Fighter. He also produced Alpha 3. And in second, this game was developed by Akira, the same studio behind Street Fighter EX. Well, all 3 of them. They produced the entire series. So how did this game turn out? Well, it depends on who you're asking. If you go into this game expecting a 3D power wave fest with people just blasting each other with laser beams, you're not going to like it. But if you like Mortal Kombat or Killer Instinct and you like those like real fast-paced combos, this was actually right up your alley. Really cool game. You should check it out if you get a chance. It sells for really cheap online. Anyway, 13 years ago on the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox, ESPN NFL 2K5 was released. And if you're like, why are you covering a sports game? Let me fill you in. Back in the early 2000s, there were 2 NFL franchises that really mattered. One being Madden, which we know about to this day because it focuses on a simulation play, I guess you could call it, and the other being NFL 2K, which retained the realism but added like an arcade style of gameplay. For example, let's say that you've got the ball and you want to sprint. Well, how do you do that? You tap the A button faster, kind of like what you used to do in Grand Theft Auto. That's how you run faster. It's super cool. Or wait a minute, let's say that you are running really fast, but there's some people up ahead and you want to break right through their block. You would hold down the A button, slowing yourself down, but building up power to push yourself right through them. It was super cool. It actually had like a risk and reward system. And that might seem like a really simple philosophy, but it added so much depth to football games that we still haven't seen to this day. But it didn't matter because Madden had brand loyalty. And unless you were willing to shell out another $50, you likely did not play the 2K series. And so 2K took a huge risk in 2004 and they just sold their game for $20 up against Madden, which of course was still $50. They undercut Electronic Arts by 60%. And according to at least one developer, that scared the hell out of them. Seriously. I'm talking about Madden developers. They're like, oh crap, this is real competition. So fans eagerly scooped up 2K5 and quickly discovered just how fantastic the gameplay innovations really were, realizing that, EA is not that good at making football games at the moment, and how good this 2K franchise was. Well, EA saw that, and they did the right thing. They hunkered down, they retooled the Madden franchise, and they made it to be a better gameplay experience. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what happened. EA actually bought full exclusivity rights for the NFL license, completely cutting out 2K from making another football game. How cool is that? Well, that's the end of the story. Or is it? Check this out. 3 years later, the company, 2K Games, produced All-Pro Football 2K8. It was a game that featured some of the best NFL players of all time, but without the NFL licenses. Fans quickly overlooked it though because Madden had the current rosters. That's why you want to play the football game. So they didn't really pay attention. But here's the really strange part of the whole story. Because they were using some of the best NFL players, one of the inclusions was O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson. And originally he was going to be on a team called the New Jersey Assassins because they had to come up with their own teams for the game. They couldn't use the NFL team, so they came up with the New Jersey Assassins. And whenever they would score a touchdown, the players would use a throat-slitting motion, looking like they're cutting their throats. Thankfully, there was a bit of controversy, and so they moved Simpson over to a different team before the game was released. But still, just a dumb idea. And I bet you didn't know that. So there's a little tidbit for you. 23 years ago, on the Sega CD, Shining Force CD was released. Now, I never got around to playing Shining Force CD, but after doing a bit of research, it turns out, and I'm kind of shocked to say this, I kind of already have played this game. See, Shining Force CD was actually a remake of the first, or actually the only two Game Gear Shining Force games, which in case you don't know, was Sega's handheld to compete with the Game Boy back in the early 90s. People complain about HD remakes these days, but they were doing them all the way back in the 90s. How cool is that? I didn't even know about that until I researched this. And finally, 24 years ago, back in 1993, Shinobi 3 Return of the Ninja Master was released. Now, Shinobi 3 received a bunch of positive reviews and previews way back in 1992. Problem is, the game wouldn't be released until August of 1993. So what exactly happened? How on earth did they have these reviews early? Well, back in the day, betas were regularly shipped to critics to get the reviews out alongside the game's actual release. Sometimes it worked out in their favor, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes there were bugs that they completely resolved before they shipped it out to stores. Sometimes they got stuck with bad reviews. It wasn't a perfect system, but it was the system they had back then. So they send out this beta, critics play it, they love the game, but despite this, the developers over at Megasoft decided to drastically retool the title and take the, in case you don't know, Shinobi's like a hack and slash ninja game. They went in and they removed and replaced entire stages. There were different bosses. There were super moves in the beta that just didn't exist. It's really bizarre. Now, fortunately for Sega and those critics, Shinobi 3 was considered a fantastic game by fans when it finally launched in 1993, and so many people just overlooked those missing aspects. They're like, oh, that's weird. I don't know, why didn't I see that thing I saw in the magazine from a year ago? But in today's wonderland of emulation, you can actually play the beta and the regular version. How cool is that? So if you feel like it, go, you can find it if you know where you're looking. But anyway, that's going to have to do it for Strong History. Good show. Good show. And if you felt anything about this show, if you have a comment, question, or concern, don't forget to email, leave a comment, do what you do. I'll respond to you in the next episode. But now it is time to close up the show. You can follow me on Twitter, if you'd like, at Dr. Cryshop. That's at Dr. Cryshop. You want to go to youtube.com/videogamesardumb and subscribe and give a like and do all that kind of bullshit, because I'm going to be having a video going up for Excel World versus Sword Art Online and Hunter Simulator. How are those games going to turn out? You'll have to find out on my YouTube page. And then I'll be playing some Splatoon 2. If you go to twitch.tv/videogamesardumb live, you can actually watch me play the game before I do a review. Now, I'm not doing any sort of commentary or anything, but if you just want to see how the game looks, just head over there. I figured I'd put that stuff up because it's a neat little thing. Anyway, though, we're going to have to close up this show. It's been fun. I still think that Nintendo should work on VR, or else they're going to be stuck making last generation games. That's right, I'm throwing on the gauntlet right now. Either go to VR, Nintendo, or just close up shop. Just give up video games altogether. Just go make your sleep monitoring devices or whatever you do. That's right, end everything that you've grown over the past 30 years. Because everything ends. Except for the Pressurecast. That doesn't end. Because the Pressurecast is forever. I'll see you next week, guys.